This is Hope for Parents in this upside down culture. And people on our panel today that are speaking to us, and we're going to get started. It's a full event. So because it's a full event, that means I'm not going to waste a lot of time with introductions and things like that. People are going to tell you who they are, give you their titles, and all of that when they come up here. So I just want to give a welcome to all of you in Facebook and all of you that will be on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. There's a lot of people that are hurting right now with their kids, and we want to give you some hope and encouragement. And I also want to say thank you to Manchester First Baptist Church. When I brought this idea to Dr. Cox, he was very quickly ready to say, let's do this. And I said, well, don't you need to talk to your staff, your deacons? And he said, nope, let's do it. And so I'm just grateful for him. Our first event was Hope After the Death of a Child. It was very thick and intense in this room because those are really hard stories. And I just want to thank all the staff. All the staff have been so supportive, and you've done a fantastic job to help us do this. And they've given up their Saturday afternoons. And also the panel, they've all given up their time. They've done this for free. We're doing all this for free. And if you want to see all the private interviews that have been done on each of these topics, you can go to Handling Our Painful Experiences, and you can also find them on Beautifully Broken Counseling. But our first one was Hope After the Death of a Child. The second one was Hope After Abortion. And the other one was Hope in Chronic Illness. And we actually had a man get out of the hospital and walk up here from a wheelchair on his own and stand here for 20 minutes and give his testimony. And we're dealing with the heat here tonight, so we're going to probably look a little dewy, and that's okay. And this one is Hope for Parents in this upside-down culture. And we have people that are going to speak to that tonight. And we're hoping to do one with Be the Bush in a couple of months. With Grace Baptist Church, that is Hope After Addiction or in Addiction. So we want to be able to help people with that as well. So our first family is coming, and I'm going to let the daddy introduce you to all these fine young men, and then their son is going to come and bless us.
Hello, I am Daniel Sohar, and this is my family. This is my wife, Erica. My son, Jack, is sitting over here. He's going to speak later tonight. Need to get closer. And we have Simon, Oliver, Otto, Lincoln, and this is our newest little guy, Riker. So we just wanted to really thank Todd and Kathy for the opportunity to come tonight and to be part of this, and just so excited for our son to be here too. Jack, if you want to come up, I'll say a prayer over you. Father in heaven, we just thank you for this opportunity. Just speak through Jack and strengthen him. Bless him. Amen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackson Sohar. As you all know, these are my parents, Daniel and Erica Sohar. I'm currently 18 years old. I am a senior in high school, and I am homeschooled. So basically, just kind of what I'm talking about today is a hope that there are still godly young men in the world who are willing to stand up for what's right and to share Christ with others and make his name known. So I'm going to make a lot of sort of sub-points, and then I'm going to kind of lead it up to my main point. So when I was 13 or 14 years old, I felt that God was calling me to be a pastor or just be in the ministry of some type. But over time, I just felt it was a burden, and it was just something I had to do, and it was like the only way I could serve God because I had to be a pastor. And then I kind of lead into another anecdote. Is another small story. There's Martin Luther, he was part of the Reformation. He told this story. There was a cobbler, and the cobbler comes to him and said, "Sir, I just got saved, and what should I do to serve God? Do I need to be a pastor? Do I need to do this?" And Martin Luther said, what you need to do is you need to go home, you need to make your shoes, because that's what a cobbler does, and sell them for a fair price, and share Christ with others. So I say that story as an example to show that even though you're not a pastor or a missionary, that's not the only way you can serve God. You can serve God by being a school janitor or a bus driver. There's so many opportunities to do those things. And I think a big point I've learned throughout my life is just knowing that I don't have to be in ministry to be able to serve God. Also, as I went through high school, I kind of came to a point where I said, I was still unsure about, should I be a pastor? Is there something else God has for me? So one day I sat down and I said, God, what is it you want me to do? I'm open to whatever you have. You've blessed my life so much that I'm giving my life back to you in a way. I'm a tool in your hands. And so God really he continued to work on my life, and he actually, he continued to reveal different things in my life, which I'll get to later as what he has for me. And I feel like a lot of people in their lives need to come to this point where they come and tell God and just say, God, whatever you have for me, whether it be a pastor or a missionary or anything, I'm willing to go and do what you've asked me to do. And I feel like a lot of teenagers and people my age, I think it kind of scares them because they're like, oh, if I tell God, whatever you want, God, he's going to send me off to Africa, and then I'm going to get some chronic illness, and it's going to be terrible, and I'm going to be miserable. But I'm reminded of the verse in Psalms 37:25. It says, I've been young and now old, yet I've not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He's always going to take care of you and provide you. God loves each and every one of us, and he's not sitting up in heaven just waiting. He's like, all right, Christian teenager, I'm going to send you to Africa, and you're going to be miserable. That's not the way God does things. He loves you, wants to give you a life of joy and peace. Now, of course, the Christian life is not all sunshine and rainbows, as we know, and there will be good times and bad, but God will be there for you, and he'll help you in those tough times. So I mentioned earlier that also I was a homeschooler, so I've been homeschooled all my life. I've never been to a public or private school. And I think it's probably what a lot has contributed to my character today, who I am as a person. I was able to grow up in a positive Christian environment. My parents did a really good job of that, and they were always there to support me and raise me in a wholesome way. I also actually feel like I've received a better education than if I went to a public or private school, because my parents were able to tailor my education to be able to fit my learning style, my interests. I really like to read. My parents get on to me about this. I stay up way too late reading, like 2, 3 in the morning sometimes, and it's not positive, but it's fun. But yeah, I really enjoy being homeschooled. There have been some challenges, obviously. It's not easy to always find a social outlet, and I don't have a lot of extracurriculars and things like that. I can't go join a club or be part of the soccer team or things like that. But I found ways to work around that, and I was able to join a homeschool co-op and be part of that, make friends. And also I had my church as a sport organization. I was able to make friends there. And also as a homeschooler, sometimes I know people make jokes about homeschoolers, about being a little bit different, and I would get teased for that. And it was really hard for me at first, being able to I struggled with I'm a homeschooler and people are making fun of me, but that's what I'm doing. And so it was hard, but eventually I got to the point where I realized that my identity is not in what other people say or think about me. It's about what God says about me. And God He loves me and cares about me, and I shouldn't be concerned about what others are saying or thinking about me. I just need to accept what I am and move on. I also feel that just homeschooling in general has really had a lot of positive benefits that have outweighed the negative. I was able to, from a young age, be in a way sheltered from things that were not positive, and I was able to grow up and have a very strong character. So kind of leading back to my earlier point about how I told God, whatever you want me to do, this is what I'm going to do. So God eventually, he actually led me to start thinking about the military as a career for what I want to do after high school. So I remember one night I went out for a run, and after I got back, I started thinking. I was like, well, what would this look like? What would it be if I went and I joined the military? How would that look like? So I think this was something God planted in my heart, just as a precursor idea, saying, this is something I have for you. I want you to keep this in mind. So I began to think about it more and just what it entailed when I was about 16 years old. And then I actually talked to my uncle, he was a Marine. And he encouraged me, I told him I was actually looking into the Marine Corps and what that entails. And he said, why don't you look into the Naval Academy? So for those of you who don't know, the Naval Academy is part of 4 or 5 service academies. There's one for the Air Force, Army, Navy, and Coast Guard. Basically, you go, you get a 4-year education. It's very competitive to get accepted into. You go, you get a 4-year education, and you graduate as an officer in your respective branch. So I was very interested in this. So I was like, oh, this sounds very fascinating. So I did some personal research, and I learned more about it, and I really felt like this was something that God wanted me to do and I moved towards. And the Naval Academy was the place I was supposed to be. And so I prayed about it, and I talked to my parents, and it felt like God was confirming this is what he wanted me to do. So like I said earlier, the Naval Academy, it's very competitive. It's like an Ivy League school, like getting into Harvard or Yale. There's like a lot of different aspects of the application. You have to get a medical examination. You have to have really strong grades in athletics and things like that. And so this is something that I felt as God has been leading me towards, and he's been opening a lot of doors for me to be able to do that. One aspect of the application process is they want to see you exemplify leadership in your extracurriculars and things like that. So I actually began to look for leadership opportunities in my community that I could do. So in high school, they have something called JROTC, which stands for, I think most of you may have heard of it, it's called Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. Basically, it's like college ROTC, but for high school, you learn to be a good citizen and just basic military discipline and things like that. So I was able to be a part of my local high school's Raider and drill teams. I'll get a little more into that later. And the colonel who's in charge of the program, he really liked me, and he really wanted me to be a part of it. So it's part of a public high school. So as a homeschooler, I was able to come and do their extracurriculars and sports. And they also have a classroom aspect, which, again, teaches about leadership and things like that. And he really wanted me to be a part of that. And my mom actually found, as a part of the National Defense Bill in 2020, that homeschoolers are actually allowed to join the JROTC classroom. So that was just an amazing opportunity that God opened up, that he was able to be like, it's just a confirmation, a first step confirmation, like, hey, I've shown you this goal, and what I want you to do is be in the military, and so here's one step in that direction. And so that was really awesome. Then I've been in JROTC for about a year, and I've made a lot of friends. It's been awesome. God's really opened a lot of opportunities for leadership opportunities. I've been able to share my faith with my fellow cadets and things like that. And the colonel who's in charge of the program was very kind. He put me on a fast-track program, so I'll be able to complete the entire program in the time that I'm in there. Typically, it takes 4 years to complete it, but again, it's just God coming through and just giving opportunities to be able to complete that. So I was also able to, God gave me those leadership opportunities that I needed. So I'm now captain of the Raider team. The Raider team is basically, we do a lot of like boot camp stuff. So obstacle courses, physical training, lots of running, and things like that. And also I'm a part of our battalion staff, which help lead the battalion, things like that. It was really cool too, because God really kind of helps me get over me feeling as a homeschooler I might be different, or people make fun of me. And the other cadets, there's a couple of them that came up to me and they're like, you're a homeschooler and you're not weird. And I was like, oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. So that was, again, God's been really good, and he's opened up a lot of doors. And even though I entered a public school environment, which is not always the most positive, I was able to still keep my testimony and actually share my faith with some of my friends. I've been able to have conversations with different people about that. And they've actually designated me as their unofficial chaplain of the program. They've asked me to pray over certain, with our Raider competitions, and we have an annual military ball. They've actually asked me to pray over that. So he's given me the opportunities to lead me in the direction of my career path and where he wants me to go. But along the way, he's given me things that I can serve him in and continue to reflect my success, or God giving me my success back to him. So I feel the key thing that really helped me was to keep my faith strong, especially in a public school environment. I made sure and set standards before I went in. It's like, okay, these are the things I'm not going to do and I'm not going to say as I go in, and just know I may get pushed back from that, and that's okay. I'm just continuing to do what I believe is right, what God has me to do. And again, just having my daily devotion times and connecting with God and keeping that up to date is very important. So just kind of Currently, I'm in the process of just applying to the Naval Academy and all of some of the other service academies and their ROTC scholarships. My top choice, as I've said several times, is the Naval Academy, and I really hope to graduate as an officer in the Marine Corps. I just feel God, even though I'm still pursuing the military route, He still has ministry things He wants me to do. So there's so many opportunities that I don't know what holds, but I still feel that He has some of that call on my life still. So another kind of point that I have is, so I'd like to talk about my girlfriend. Her name's Michelle. So we met when we were 14 years old, and it's really been God's hand. God has helped me to be able to, He's helped me skip a lot of high school dating drama and things like that. So I was just sitting in church one day, and I see her in the choir, and I was like, man, she's really pretty. I want to talk to her. So I prayed and asked God. I said, God, if this is a girl that you want me to talk to, and I'd really like to talk to her. So I finally, it was really cool because it was just, there were moments where it'd be like, oh, I'm right there, I can talk to her, and then it's like, no, not yet. And so eventually got to the point where it was really funny. My youth pastor introduced me to her. And so we've been together for almost 4 years now, and God's been really good, and He's really blessed us. And I really feel like that if it's the Lord's will, that we'll be married someday, and that's what He has for us. So I'm really excited about that. So I guess I say all of the points about me being in JROTC and my career path and everything. I kind of bring it back to my main point, is there are still good young men in the world. I know there are many of them here tonight, and I just want to highlight that because I feel like sometimes we look in the world and we see, oh, so many bad things are happening in politics, and the church is not doing what it's supposed to, and there's so many dark things that are going on that are very discouraging to us as Christians. And it's just good to remember that even though the darkness seems so strong, God is so much stronger than that, and He is still working, even though we don't see it. We don't always see God's hand in everything, but I'm almost certain that He's raising up young men who will grow up and be part of a generation that will accomplish His will and share Christ with others. And again, just knowing that trusting God has been a really big part of me being a tool in His hands, just saying, God, whatever you have for me, I'm here to do that. And it's my job to seek opportunities that He's placed on my heart and continue to pursue those and just stay in His will and His word. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jack. I wanted to actually let you see young people that are getting it right. It's not all adults tonight. There are going to be some young people, because too many times when we get older, we say, oh, them young people, right? But there are good young people, and they're doing it right, and we want to highlight them. So, Judge Carter, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Judge Robert Carter. I want to speak to you from my experience, and I want to speak to you about my experience, and I want to let you know that I'm a baby judge. I was elected, and I was sworn in about a year ago. However, I was a lawyer for 30 years prior to that. I know I don't look that old. I feel that old, I promise. I tried my first case when I was a 25-year-old lieutenant junior grade in the U.S. Navy Judge Advocate General's Court. I defended a young man that was just a few years younger than me in a court-martial where he couldn't adapt to military life, and he decided to steal a car and run it through the main gate at the naval base in Norfolk, Virginia. But that was the start of my legal career, and for the next 30 years, I have been involved in what you would call trial practice. I didn't do too many wills for people, and I didn't do contracts. I didn't represent people in disability claims. I represented people in divorce cases and adoption cases and juvenile cases and criminal cases. So I saw the whole realm of human conduct that can come in front of either a state court judge or military court-martial judge or a United States District Federal judge or a juvenile court judge or a general sessions judge. So that's really from where my experience comes from. And I'll tell you that I'm a circuit judge, and here we are in Coffee County, Tennessee. This is the 14th Judicial District of the state of Tennessee. Coffee County is unusual in that we are our own judicial district. For instance, the district to the south of us, the 12th Judicial District, comprises the counties of Franklin County, Marion County, Grundy County, Ray County, and Bledsoe County, and Sequatchie County. That's a 5-county district. I'm not sure if it's because of the way the population shook out or this being the state of Tennessee, the way just the political allocation shook out, but there are 4 judges, elected judges in this district. There's myself, and there's a Judge Lockhart, who's the other circuit court judge, and there's a Judge Ewell and Judge Perry. Judge Ewell and Judge Perry are what they call general sessions judges, and it's important for the purposes of what we talk about here tonight because they have juvenile court jurisdiction, which means that a child that has some legal matter under the age of 18 would go in front of those judges usually. And every now and then they will come to us, but it's got to come to us as circuit judges, but that's got to be a pretty unusual situation. That is our court system here in Coffee County. The instances in which the court system might come into play with regard to a young person could vary from a happy occasion, such as an adoption, or a sad occasion. And I will tell you that, unfortunately, we see more sad occasions than we do happy occasions. Before I moved back here, I'd been a practicing attorney for some time before I moved back to Tennessee. I'd been a lawyer in the Navy, and I had practiced law in Jacksonville, Florida for a period of time. But before I moved out here, I didn't know there was such a thing as a juvenile court. I grew up in a house where my mother and father loved us very much. They were married for 48 years. That marriage ended when my father died about 10 years ago, and I don't remember my parents ever raising their voice in front of us. Now, that's not to say they didn't. I mean, I know they did, but so that was an alien thing to me. But what I saw was I saw a lot of kids that really just needed a stronger parental influence. I saw a lot of truancy cases where the parent would just say, well, you know, I just can't make them get up and go to school. Now, we were talking about a 30-year-old that outweighed their 12-year-old by about 40 pounds. I don't know about you, but when I was 12 and my dad was 45 years old, my father could get me up and make me go to school. We saw kids that were unsupervised. We saw a lot of cases where a parent would put their needs in front of the child, and they would be out trying to find the next Mrs. or Mr. Parent, and they should have been home watching their kids. Now, that was early on. I did a lot of juvenile court cases early in my practice, but what I started seeing is this Pandora's box called technology infect the way that courts treated juvenile cases. And, you know, when I first started practicing law, cell phones were about as big as a brick. And it looked like a World War II walkie-talkie. In World War II, they had something called the SCR 530. And you see the GIs talking to headquarters on that. That's what a cell phone looked like. And kids didn't have them. Rich people had them. My suspicion is Donald Trump had one. Nonetheless, you know, about 10 years ago, we start seeing smaller and smaller and more efficient cell phones. And the next thing you know is we start seeing kids get cell phones. Let me tell you, that's had a role in the administration of juvenile justice here at home. You know, it's like any piece of technology, right? It's got its good and it's got its bad. It allows a parent to keep tabs on a child. You have constant communication with the child. The child has educational resources right there on the phone. You've got a calculator right. I don't know about you, but I had to learn how to do math the hard way. But nonetheless, there's a calculator right there on the phone. You know, there's research is at the tip of your child's fingertip. But the problem is, any information in the world is at the end of your child's fingertip. And the problem, the other problem is that cell phones all of a sudden started implementing photographic devices. And let me tell you something, if you think cell phones affected the administration of juvenile justice, just having a cell phone, once the cell phones had cameras, it got worse. If a child makes a picture, you know, a 12-year-old doesn't have the social understanding that perhaps a 22-year-old or a 32-year-old or a 52-year-old has. But if a 12-year-old girl makes a picture of herself on a cell phone and sends it to a boy, that picture's out there forever. And if the boy receives the picture and resends it, he's committed a crime, and that's out there forever. So about 10 years ago, we started seeing these problems. And I guess the reason I want to tell you all about this is because if you have a child and you want to afford them a cell phone, that's one thing, but that doubles and triples the potential problems that may cause. And I'll tell you, and I base this on the experience of my own children and also what I've seen in various courtrooms. If you have that phone, please monitor their contacts. Please monitor the information that's available to them. And by all means, take them up at night before they go to bed. Because they'll sit there and fiddle with those phones all night. And then the next morning, guess what? They'll be too tired to go to school, and then you'll be in court trying to explain to the judges, hey, I just can't get her up to get her to school. Well, guess what they're going to punish? They're not going to punish the child. They're going to punish the parent for truancy. But the parent's not doing the child any services. This isn't the last thing I want to talk about, but this might be the most important thing I want to talk about. Over the course of my career, both as a judge, as an attorney, I've seen various crimes committed against children. I had a juvenile judge tell me a few days ago that there have been 38 cases of child abuse come through the Coffee County juvenile court system just thus far this week. There again, watch your children, watch who they talk to, watch who they communicate with. By all means, watch who they communicate with on electronic devices. I used to think that really, really bad people lived in New York City, and I used to think that they lived in maybe Nashville or Memphis or Chattanooga. Those people are among us. And unfortunately, this is not 1960s Bel Air school where I grew up. We have to deal, as is the subject of this seminar tonight, we have to deal with right now in 2023 America. And there are a lot of great things about this country, but there are a lot of things that have come along, and a lot of it's because of technology, a lot of it is because of the exploding society that we have here in Middle Tennessee, but a lot of it is just the nature of the beast. You need to keep a close eye on your children, and especially who they associate with. One of the things that I've had to contend with, especially as a judge, but more so as an attorney, was unfortunately the statistics bear out that about half the marriages in Tennessee now are going to end up in a divorce. And I'd like to tell you that's a better statistic, but that's what it is. And of course, as an attorney, I would advocate for people that were seeking a divorce, and as a judge, I have to make decisions regarding the division of people's property, but more importantly, and the most important job I have, is the placement of children. What I see sometimes is I see perhaps a parent that uses a child as a pawn, and I can tell you that we are encouraged as trial judges to look for that and to make sure that that doesn't happen. What the courts above us and what the legislature has told us to do is, as long as the parent is a fit parent, what we are charged with is that we are supposed to set up custody arrangements to maximize the amount of time that either parent or both parents spend with the child. And that's another way that the law has evolved over the 30 years that I've been at it. When I first moved back here, generally speaking, the mother would get the children as what they call the primary custodial parent, and the father would get what they call standard visitation. And back then, what that meant was every other weekend from Friday at 5 until Sunday at 5. Let me tell you, having been on the receiving end of that, 4 days a week, 4 days a month is no way for a parent, usually it was the dad, to be a parent to that child. So what we've seen is the law evolve to a more equitable arrangement wherein the non-custodial parent, and usually that is the father, especially with younger, the non-custodial parent will get much more expanded parenting time with the children. For instance, maybe 1 week on and 1 week off, or perhaps every 3 weekends rather than every other weekend, or even perhaps a split custody in the middle of the week. Now, that's not always practicable in every case, and that really only works if the parents are going to live close together after they've split up. But those are the kind of decisions that judges have to make when it comes to making arrangements for who's going to rear these children from the time they're whatever age. And we see people getting divorced that have children that are 1 and 2 years old, so that child's going to have to live with that custody arrangement for 15, 16, 17 years, or in a lot of cases, we see older children. And one thing that our courts have kind of grown into is that we are encouraged to listen to older children as to where they want to be. And I'll tell you, my personal preference on that is, and I don't want to play my hand too much here, but I kind of grew up, and there's some older people in this audience, people more my age that will identify with this, but I grew up where the 15-year-olds didn't get to tell the 50-year-olds what to do. However, if I have an older child, 15, 16, 17 years old, and they appear to be a mature child, they've got good grades, they've never been in trouble, they're involved in extracurricular activities, which I think is very important, sports especially, if I feel like that child kind of knows their home situation better than I'll ever know it, and if they tell me they want to be at a certain place for a certain period of time with a certain period, I tend to honor that. If that goes against every grain, I promise you, that goes against every grain that my parents had ever instilled in me. Children were to be seen and not heard. I think some of you may remember that phrase from your grandparents. I want to end you guys with this. The courts, they used to say that the best lawyers kept their clients out of court. I've got a better take on this. I think the best parents keep their children out of court, and they keep themselves out of court. But if your child does, and if your child ends up in a juvenile court or your child ends up in adult court, for that matter, in a custody case or some case of that, the judge does have guidelines that they go by, and they apply the facts that our state legislature and our appellate cases have put down for us, but they apply common sense because most of us have children, and we kind of know, at least in theory, we know what we're doing with regard to placement of children. I know I've harped on cell phones, and I think it's because I lost mine and had to replace it a day or two ago. But there's another topic I really want to end with, because I think this permeates a lot of problems here. And I'll give an example. Many years ago, I represented a mother who was heavily addicted to heroin, I think it was, and had a child that was either stillborn or died within some couple of hours of birth. That mother, was she a murderer or was she a drug addict? She was a drug addict. You remove the drugs, and all the other awful conduct that goes along with that will go away. Now, how do we do that? There again, watch your children and be frank with them and tell them about the bad things that can go wrong early. Sometimes they see things. You need to be frank with them about what they've seen. If they see it on television, if they see it with another parent, if they see it with one of the people in the home, don't bury your head in the sand. Be frank with your children about that, because this is a scourge. And in the 80s, it was crack cocaine. That was going to be the end of us. Well, that's pretty mild now. In the 90s, or especially around here in the rural South, it was methamphetamine. Well, that was going to be the end of us, and believe me, that's still pretty bad around here. Now it's what they call fentanyl, and I know y'all have heard about that. It seems like every new vogue drug that comes across America gets worse and worse and worse, and until we figure out how to stop it, it's just going to keep getting worse, and it's going to affect us. I was proud to be invited here to speak today, and if there's one thing I can leave y'all with is societies that flourish over history have always had good, strong legal systems that the public had confidence in. And I'll ask y'all, just remember to have confidence in your legal system because it does work. It's imperfect. It's like American democracy, but it does work. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Judge Carter. When we first moved here, he and his wife, they came to our doorstep and they were campaigning. And I always ask very blunt questions when it comes to people that are going to serve in our community. And I asked him right on my front doorstep, do you love Jesus? That's the only way you're going to get my vote. And he said yes. And we even found out we went to the same church. And my husband is about to be his new teacher. He doesn't even know yet. So, there's been a circle there.